because uh, oh, we'll start with y'all. What are your thoughts? Either on him or on the situation. India says when you do clownery, clownery will come back to bite. Che E says those tweets should have been deleted a long time ago. Yeah, yeah, you would think at the point, you know, folks like pop off into another level of fame that you hire somebody to go back through all your socials and find the problematic things and make them go away. I just saw that. Is it all right with you if I read it? Honestly, while I'm still a Tyler fan, I literally grew up on his music. I do fully agree that he should actually make the effort to directly confront the harmful behavior he engaged in during his early years instead of complaining about people pointing out the unhinged shit he used to do. It makes me think of Earl Sweatshirt, like him and Tyler both came up together through Odd Future and were making similar dark edgelord type of music and behavior. But Earl in the early stages of his career directly confronted the bullshit he was doing in his music at first. He directly said in an interview in between his Doris album and I Don't Like That Shit album around 2013 to 2015 that he does not like the hateful things he said in his music. They were a product of misplaced anger, and he wants to grow and make better things. And anyone who said they were only a fan of his edgelord shit, he's not fucking with them. Which, for me personally, in terms of emotional maturity, makes me respect Earl more because Tyler has not had that moment of confrontation. His music has undeniably changed and evolved for the better, but he refuses to confront what it used to be, which does validly make him seem still immature to folks. So I think that there are several things that could be happening with regard to Tyler, which is number one, he hates. Is that somebody coming to my house? Number one, he hates online commentary. Looks like it. He hates online commentary. He hates people, just like me who nope, they took that to my neighbors who moved out. Hates people just like me with a microphone and a camera who get up and talk, right? And so when you and he hates it because there's a lot of uneducated, ignorant people out there with their hot takes asserted as fact, right? We've talked about that a lot in the last 12 days. So, his reasons could be considered valid. But the problem is that that could cause him to be tempted to go ahead and discredit everything that comes out of online discourse about a person or so-called cancel culture, right? And so that very well could be a factor here. The other thing is that he's a famous person, um, and he's got a massive ego, and ego is not a inherently a bad thing. The question is, can he balance his ego and balance his predisposition towards the zeitgeist and what comes out of social media and cancel culture and scandals and things like that? Can he balance that can he balance that against, excuse me, objectivity and responsibility to his brand? And we're actually going to have a very in-depth conversation about this, I hope, the first Sunday in November with a guest, um, in talking about, you know, the power of dog whistles is that they attract dogs, and I'm biting this from our soon-to-be guest, um, who used this analogy in a conversation with me. But I thought it was a great one, and I can't think of a better one right now. Um, the power of dog whistles is that they attract dogs. And if you don't want dogs in your yard, not in the neighborhood, not your next door neighbor's yard, your yard. If you don't want dogs in your yard, saying, "Well, he whistled me over here, so it's okay if I shit all over the yard where he has invited everybody else too." Right? But he explicitly invited me and my dog shit. If you are no longer or did not intend to tell the dogs to come to your yard, then you have an obligation to get outside your front door, get on that porch, grab a megaphone in one hand and a hose in the other. That's your obligation, and it's bigger than your brand, right? It's about the fact that these things do have a material impact in the world, and right now we've got people and entire movements in this country who are gripping onto anything anybody says that validates their behavior, their opinions, their vote, and if you don't do anything, you are putting your ego above the material power and impact that those things actually do have in the world, and you are hiding behind your privilege of not being impacted by it. Because white people are the largest consumers of hip hop and rap, so they're gonna buy your shit regardless. So he can easily rationalize this into because of his privilege, because of his ego, because of his predisposition towards, people with mics and cameras are weird anyway. Very easy for him to say, "Psh, I ain't gotta say shit." And that leaves the rest of us who do have to face the consequences of the material impact of his actions or inaction with dog shit on our shoes. That's unsanitary. It's a public health threat. So, I'm not gonna, I looked at it. I thought about making a video, but it's my sick day. And I was like, I honestly can't get my energy up for it. It's not something that I internally feel like compelled to do because compulsion is power. And I was like, I don't feel I could make a video about this. And I did start to jot out like, what would my take be? How would I approach this situation? Uh, and then by the time I got through with that little exercise, I was like, yeah, I'm not, I can't get up for that. I had to check a docket real quick. Um, because I started thinking to myself, like, again, the conversation that we had during the live about Rory and Maul, like, what do we miss if this never happens? And it's tempting to say we miss nothing from Biscuit Heads talking out the sides of their neck, but that's probably not true. And so, yeah, I was thinking, what actually matters here, right? Because the very first thing that came to mind when I started looking at the sequential order of the, controversial tweets at the time, one of the very first things that I thought about was my son. Um, and a point in time where I realized that um he and his friends, and therefore his peers, were really being conditioned to um, hate certain things about the Black experience that we aren't responsible for. And that's a hard scale to balance when your kids, like go off to school every day, you know? And they learn about Black history 1 month out of the year. And they only or predominantly learn about the most degrading, the most humiliating, the most triggering, the most traumatic, the most brutal aspects of Black history. And I remember having a conversation with my son when he was in high school, him and some of his friends, about how they really didn't want another Black History Month assembly ever, ever. They really didn't want teachers trying to teach, trying to come up with or adopt, some lesson plan on Black history. They really just wanted it to stop. Um, and in a sense, to move on from that. And because that is not how he's 25 now, because that is not how their generation views Black history. So we started talking about the perceptions of it, Black history, um, along generational lines and along racial lines and even along gender lines to just get just so that we could have a more analytical conversation to remove it from the um, trauma exhaustion that we all feel in having these things brought up to justify other people saying, well, I'm doing the right thing, or I'm being an ally, or I'm just trying to teach, or they're literally just checking a box and saying, I did the thing. Um, so that was like one of the very first things that I thought of. Um, the second thing that I thought of was just puberty, puberty and boys. There's something that I think boys in particular go through With girls, it's called something else, okay? They might go through the same thing, but but with boys, I call it, the phase of asshole as personality, and that is a pipeline into extremism. It's when boys are trying to figure out what is funny. What is funny to them? What is funny to the people around them? What does that mean for their own personality? And a lot of them initially mistake can take things that are kind of funny and kind of touch the line a little bit into an edginess can quickly cross over into actually you're just saying things that are assholey. And you've mistaken it as being funny because you're immature and the group that you are surrounded with is also immature. So their laughter you think is validation that this is actually a funny thing, but it's not a funny thing. And I've said this before on this channel, in between the ages of about, I'm gonna say 12 and 23, 22, 23, I had 3 to 4 intentional conversations with my son where I had to literally stop him and rerun that conversation of, "I think you're starting to mistake again, uh, being an asshole as having a personality or being a funny or humorous person." And he always course corrected himself long term, not just in the moment, but long term, really went away and examined and thought about that, what it means, the impact on it, like all the things that I laid down for him in that very first conversation where he was like, "I'm sick of this shit. I'm sick of this. Move past it, get over it." And also being sick and tired of older, meaning older than me, Black people, particularly in academia, lecturing him and his peers on how they should feel about things in history. And so that's just a real thing. That's just a real thing. And if you're fortunate, you have adults or other peers around you that can help you balance that scale so that it doesn't get out of control, so that you can put it in the proper context and so that you can see things for what they are without adopting them and inadvertently becoming a part of the problem. And so what I see and think when I watch, people being like, "Well, it's about time. That motherfucker has been so problematic and da 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 da." Like there's clearly, some people on the internet that want him to get his comeuppance. And then there's people on the internet that just want him to be accountable and to show those kinds of step, pivot, adjust, step again, you know? Step, pivot, adjust, step again. And without some kind of intentional on his part, statement, they're not gonna they don't get the satisfaction of seeing that. And then this just gets added to the very long list that the internet has already compiled of where he has been problematic and he has not, to the internet satisfaction, taken or shown accountability and then shown different behavior in the future. And that's exactly what I've been talking about. My son hates Black History Month too, in the social context of its existence in a a white supremacist normative environment. He doesn't like it either, neither did any of his friends. I think that probably started for them late elementary school, middle school, but by the time they got to high school, they were like, "Fuck this shit." And then I know there are a lot of people out there because we went through this at the time. Well, just do it yourselves then. And like, yes, definitely put the onus on, the people least equipped, right? With the least amount of resource, the least amount of time to prepare. It's not their onus to do that. However, it is incumbent upon them to be a part of the conversation and the solution and to express why to the school, to the leadership, to the teacher in question, to the district. This does not work for us anymore, and you need to do it a different way. And it should be impact informed curriculum. And so again, when I looked at what Tyler said and I looked at it in kind of the sequencing of the, the outrage history, I'm not going to say more nuanced. I'm just going to say I have a nuanced perspective on that very topic because and not just with my son, but with other people, other adults, other people of a younger age. I've had this conversation several times. That was the longest and most intimate because it was going on in my house, right? And there were definitely times throughout the years that Black History Month was problematic, not because of its existence, but because of how it is utilized in society, how it is utilized in the classroom, where kids don't have control over the curriculum. And either a teacher or a building or a district or state decides what is going to be put in front of them. And yeah, it can be hugely problematic. It's often inaccurate. It's often trauma based. Did I mention inaccurate, limited, pancaked, reductive? And so for kids who are actually raised in environments that provide for them a more nuanced understanding of the typical figures of Black history or the typical benchmarks of Black history and put them into a greater, more holistic context, who can talk about all the people that were here and not just Black people, and talk about it in the context of American history, because Black history is American history, um, then they don't feel so microscoped by it and degraded and humiliated. So that's just real, and how people reduce that down into tweets and shit like that, usually unwise. Usually unwise, usually comes across as a hot take if it's not a hot take. And again, I'm not defending him. I'm not saying what he said was right, and I'm not saying that people shouldn't be outraged by it. But I would be lying if I said that he doesn't have a point on that particular issue. I am not People are not going to get me with, you know, black hi- he can you believe he said Black History Month should be eradicated? Like there's an argument for how it is implemented and what aspects of it are not okay because of the impact that it has on Black people. It's a constant regurgitation of they talk about the same people, and I've worked in public schools in elementary/middle, high school, and I've been an adjunct professor, so I can give you firsthand participated in bringing in special guests and, somebody who comes by with, the traveling slave museum and has the artifacts of the KKK, and people who bring in professional athletes to talk about, or retired athletes or scientists or whatever. Nevertheless, typically it is the same shit, age appropriately, every single year. And the more reductive it is in what is presented, the more usually trauma porny-ish it is, right? It's the brutality of slavery, it's the degradation of Black people. It is a it is a it is just like waterboarding you with the atrocities and dehumanization that Black people went through. And the only way to convey that is to show it. And so that can, through just proximity of race, make people feel really humiliated seeing that, or traumatized seeing that. And there are Black people who know the history of their enslaved ancestors. So it's not just a theoretical trauma. It's not just a what's in your DNA trauma. It's a we know the names of our ancestors who went through this, and this is terrible. And then the less Black people in the environment, the more traumatic it is, because you've literally got there were times where we were the only Black kids in our school, and I was the only Black kid in my class. So you got people turning and looking at you, coming up to you in the hall and apologizing to you for like weird-ish goes down, right? Weird-ish goes down. Lots of then microaggressions that build up over years and years and years and years. And then you've got the kids who are dedicated to being an asshole and take what they learn to harass and bother slash emotionally torture their classmates under the guise of jokes. And they get a stern talking to by the principal to understand these things are not funny. These things are very serious. There's no real consequence. So again, I'm not making an excuse for him. I'm not saying the way he said it, how he said it, or whatever was behind his thinking in that is all right and valid. I'm talking about my own experience in my own four walls. It's a necessary but nuanced conversation to have. So internalized racism and white supremacy is a hell of a drug. It's really real. And so that gives you an idea of number 1, he's journeying, number 2, where he's at in his journey. It's a very personal thing. So while the outside world, wants accountability and statements and da 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 da, I also don't want the man to come out and bullshit and say some things for the sake of saying things. I don't want him to talk about something that he hasn't done a bare minimum to figure out the broader impact and implications of what he said then and the impact of it right now, i.e. Taylor Swift necklace. Right now, in this moment, right now. It's not enough to say, um, as was pointed out in the comment that I read earlier, it's not enough to just be to there's a couple it's not enough, right? It's not enough to say I was young and dumb. That's not good enough. It's also not enough and super fucking egotistical to sit behind your mansion walls and think to yourself, well, people know that I've changed. I mean, it's obvious that I've changed, right? I don't I've clearly changed. No, that's your ego. That's the fame trap. We don't know it until you say it and demonstrate it and make it real. And just like you don't want us to assume that you're a fucking asshole, why would we assume that you are a changed, grown, and evolved person? Especially right now in this moment, Young Thug's album cover. We're gonna talk about it the first weekend in November when I have a guest. And we've been talking about it here, Mini Psycho Ninja. We've been talking about it here, and I have scripted videos on this here. This COINTELPRO of white supremacy and how many calls are coming from inside the house of the culture, where there are people lining up more than happy to pick me's Snitches don't give a fuck about snitches. They are jumping up and down in the crowd. Ooh, 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 white supremacy. Pick me, pick me, pick me. Drake, Nicki, Wayne, Young Thug. Who was the last one to hit us with the hard R? Was that NBA Youngboy? Who was that? One of them's. Tory. Because if you anti-black woman, you anti-black. Hate to tell y'all. Hate to break it to you. Oh yeah, but we're front of the pack. Can't get shit. Can't go nowhere without us. This one, child, can't forget the poster child. And this is the other one. And this is why I called it. I don't know what I called this thing. Oh yeah, Tyler and the nostalgia outrage. Like, you don't, people, I just got to be clear in my opinion here, okay? People don't really give a shit. The majority of people don't really give a shit. And if Tyler is watching and thinking, well, see, then I don't need to. No, no, no. No, no, no. No, no, no. No, no, no. No, no. Whether they're using it for entertainment or not, the discourse exists and therefore it's valid and something that needs to be addressed. And the questions are valid too, right? Like, I don't think people are up in there. I don't think the outrage is real. I think the want for him to say something and um therefore show going forward also a clear change and disavowal of that kind of thing. I think that is very real. But the whole can you believe in oh my god and da 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 da, like, get the fuck over yourself for that. 10, 15 years ago, child. I just can't get up for that. I just can't get up for that. You want me to get up for something that long ago? The first thing that I'm gonna go to is a presidential candidate saying, when you're famous, they let you do it. You just grab them by it. You want me to go into the Wayback Machine? That's the Wayback Machine that actually has a bigger material impact today. That if we don't deal with that, the Tyler the Creator shit would have no relevance whatsoever. None. We would be able to chalk it up as he said that then, the shit was immature and move it on. It's the time, it's the context, it's the circumstance. Yeah, none of this was a secret. People already knew about this stuff. There was discourse about it at the time. So, and his comment about, white people not giving a shit about black culture or good black music, found it relevant, and having no interest to investigate, learn more, immerse themselves. Facts. Facts. But also facts. I saw plenty of white people crying over D'Angelo's death on social media. So, which dogs are in your yard? There's different breeds. I saw plenty of white people crying, posting tributes, talking about their favorite, nostalgic memories of his music, its impact on them. So, which white people in your audience? How come they don't know? What makes them different? What kind of dog whistle you got again? What kind of dogs does that particular whistle attract? Yeah, because I wasn't talking about the young black fans. They got parents. They've heard D'Angelo. We've established that, people that look like you and me in terms of age who are white, they're beside themselves in shambles. So the younger, so it's not their kids. The white people who are crying on social media about D'Angelo, their kids are not the one. They're not the white kids in Tyler the Creator's audience. White kids in Tyler the Creator's audience who have never heard D'Angelo did not have parents that listened to D'Angelo. What did they listen to? I wonder. It's a rhetorical question. Kid Rock. I'm just curious what they listen to. What kind of dog whistle you got again? What kind of dogs you calling over here? I got the invitation to dance. Where the dog? They're the shitty dogs. They just shit anywhere. Oh, them's the rules. You don't care. Well, maybe I don't want to. Maybe I don't want to dance over here. Yeah, nasty. No home training. You just whistled the dogs over here to shit wherever where you told people to come dance. Nope. Nope. No. Yeah, violence. I refuse to do the fucking morality dozens. I am not a fan. So I completely agree with you. I am not a fucking fan. Do not tell me you are outraged about this. Like outraged. I'm outraged. This is the thing you're outraged about? Really? Okay. All right. Masked secret police in the streets, does that get your blood pressure going anywhere? I'm just curious. 34-time convicted felon in the White House, currently breaking all the laws and literally tearing down part of the White House that don't get you up, don't get you nowhere. But this the thing, huh? This the thing. It's performative bullshit. It's performative bullshit. But I certainly wasn't gonna spend my sick day making a 30-minute video about it because that's probably how long it would take to say the things in a very nuanced way, and I was like, "The internet doesn't give a shit about that either, so I'm definitely not gonna put my time into that. I'm not gonna do that." Yeah, this is just entertainment. It's a way for people to perform, moral authority of which they have none, and it's a way for people to make money and outlets to make money, clicks and likes and shit. Camera coochie type business. That's what they doing with this, and I'm just not interested. I fully agree. Yeah, I fully agree. We do have space for nuance. We do have space for nuance because that's what this channel is about, and y'all support it very, very well. But, you know, at like 12 to 15 minutes for a scripted video, about 12 to 15 minutes. This would have taken a lot longer. It would have taken a lot longer. And like I said, it's not something that I feel compelled, so I'm not fueled to. So we talking about it here. I'm laying down my take on it here in this live. But yeah, 30 minutes of trying to explain, and then I know, even though I'm not being an apologist, I know I would have people saying that I am, or "You just like him," or "You're just a glazer." You're just, but fuck you, little biscuit heads. Get out of here. Get out of here. I have a hose. I will use it. Get off my lawn. Yeah, it's it's uh it's never a quick conversation. Y'all got to buy the merch the Lord gave you. And the Lord is me at this point in time. I'm not gonna make more merch. If the merch people were like, "We need this, and we needed this, and we needed this," and then nobody buys it, I'm not making more merch like that. Because I gotta pay for it. Every time I do a merch bundle, it costs me about $300. I haven't even recouped that on this latest merch bundle yet, so, once I get over that, I'll take a look at it, but appreciate it. And they're conditioned to be, right? They're conditioned to be really fragile with their feelings and, put people on pedestals as they can do no wrong. And, Chromacopia is such a, you know, fucking Mr. Morale of an album. He seems so deep and evolved, and but that doesn't mean that he's perfect. That doesn't mean he's never been a dumbass before. That never means he's never had a hot take or a stupid take, etc., etc., etc. So, again, in their own environments, I hope they are finding spaces for some actual nuanced conversation if they actually really care about the thing. But, you know, all seven and we watch them fall. Fuck idolation. That's okay. I mean, over 20, yeah, I mean, that's peak saying dumbass shit. Over 20 is peak saying dumbass shit that more people are gonna be exposed to because now you have an account that you are fully responsible for, plus he was, famous already and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, that's when they're really on a roll. Hello, beautiful. It's good to see you. Complex characters exist in the real world. We're all complex. Nobody is, you know, a binary of all of the things that make a human human. Nobody is. We're all complex. So, you know, um, I may arrive at somebody being a biscuit head ass. That doesn't mean that I negate the complexity of who they are. Oftentimes, the complexity of who they are is the evidence of the ingredients that made up the dumbass before us, right? So, yeah, 20s and famous and with some money? Shit. 20 and famous and with some money? You can't tell that boy nothing. Yeah, life experience is the practicum for him, not a parental lecture. Yeah, and, what does accountability even look like in this situation? Like, what does that even look like? Does it look like social media collectively wagging its finger at him? Is that accountability? I thought about that a lot too last night, because I saw a lot of comments on social media and the word accountability was used, and I was thinking to myself, because I think about words a lot, um, I think about the social definition of them, the definition of them in context, the actual dictionary definition of them. What does accountability mean in this situation? And is it something that people can do, or is his participation required? That's just an open question. And you in particular don't need to feel responsible for answering it. Anybody can chime in if they have thoughts on that. But I definitely thought about that. I thought, what is because when I came to the conclusion that, well, the majority of this is just all for entertainment purposes and people getting their rocks off on the internet right now to wag a finger or make some money or whatever. But then yes, of course, seeing the word accountability, and it's like, okay, well, if there is any material validity to this entire situation, besides the fact that, we could be a little bit more nuanced in how we're discussing these things, then it would be accountability. And what is accountability in this situation? Would accountability be what? What? What is that? This is not an indication of evolution. This is an indication of fame to the status that would justify a collaboration. I just want to be clear. That is not necessarily uh, evidence of his human evolution. His evolution as an artist, sure. Meow meow 1, 2, 3, 4, meow has a bone to pick with Tyler the Creator, right? Not really. Number one, and number two, I don't listen to that horse shit. The "Why you bringing up old shit" is not a discussion. It's gaslighting. Yeah, what would be considered acceptable accountability? And considering, that's going to be a very different answer for different people, a consensus on that is non-existent, right? There is no critical mass that's like, "We need to boycott Tyler, the Creator." That's not what's happening right now. That's not happening, right? Do people feel like if he speaks to this to their satisfaction and not just they just bringing up old shit, does that is that accountability? Or does it feel like accountability? Is there a difference? Yes, that is very, very true. I saw somebody, I think it was Perez Hilton, when the Britney Spears conservatorship came into the news. Um, I could be making it up, but it's demonstrative, okay? This is just based on my memory. There at some point in time, he was like, "Yes, I apologize for this," and da 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 da. And yes, several years ago, he did do several things. Like he sat down with Oprah at one point in time to talk about his change and evolution as a person, which didn't stick. But anyway, He did all of the things that appeared to be him showing accountability. And then at one point in time in the whole conservatorship brouhaha, he was just like, he said something to the effect of, I'm not doing this anymore. I am not apologizing again. I apologized for this. You all know that I apologized for this, and I'm not doing this again. And I remember thinking to myself, and that's where you're fucking up. That's when you're fucking up. When you have a huge transgression, you should anticipate that people are going to stumble upon it generationally based on whatever else is happening out in the world that you have no control over. You should not assume that everybody on the motherfucking planet, born before or after you made your apology video, has seen it. That's ego. That's arrogance. That's fame. And so when you really fuck up and you really take accountability for it, one of the things that you realize, especially if you are a public facing figure, is that you are likely going to have to um, explain it and apologize for it for the rest of your life. It's going to be with you. You're going to have to explain it and speak to it from a place of humility and neutrality for the rest of your fucking life. Kevin Hart did the same thing. Kevin Hart did the same thing. I'm not going to talk about this anymore. I apologize for it. You know I apologize for it. Go watch that apology. I'm not going to talk about it anymore. And that was the wrong step. And we know it was the wrong step because he then produced a 6-part documentary series on Netflix called Don't Fuck It Up, because he fucked it up. I'm never going to speak on this again. I'm never going to da 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 da. And people were like, okay, so you're a homophobic asshole. You're arrogant, you're egotistical, you're rich, you think you're above it all, and that you don't have to address this to our satisfaction. He had a whole stand-up special and a 6-7-part Netflix series following him around with cameras, learning about how that was wrong and how he made it worse. And people telling him, nah, brah, you're going to wear this for the rest of your life. You're going to wear this for the rest of your life. And people are going to justifiably be able to fry you for it for the rest of your life if you don't humble yourself and realize that you're going to have to say, yes, I did this. I was wrong for it. Accountability also isn't static, right? Because a lot of people want to do the I took accountability at the time kind of thing. But if you then reverted to now I'm just going to do similar things to that, then you're not really accountable. It's the step, pivot, change step. That's the difference. Mhm. Mhm. And now he does from a holistic place. Right? From a holistic place, and also and that makes it okay for him to also be, angry about the racism that he experienced in the situation, because he does both, but he acknowledges it, and he will also be quick to tell somebody, "You are not going to make that the reason why I don't coach, or I don't do anything else that I shouldn't get the opportunity to coach, or I shouldn't get the opportunity, or I shouldn't have brand deals, or I shouldn't da da I shouldn't be doing commercials. You don't get to say that to me today, Karen. You don't get to get all up in your feelings because you just discovered that I did this back in the day. I did. I did do that. Now I do this, I do this, I do this, I do this. And so when people try and fry him for it, and he's like, this is disproportionate racist horseshit, he's right. First of all, it was then, even though he was wrong, it was still disproportionate racist horseshit. But he can hold both of those because he understands the importance of perception and what accountability really actually truly means. Black Zinfandel, I hate this shit more than anything. I can't stand it. I can't stand it. They're trying to detract you from, no, you're trying to insult my intelligence and act like I can't prioritize what's important here, or act like I can't juggle focusing on more than one thing. That's horseshit. It's just like people saying they say the same thing about the Taylor Swift necklace. If you believe this, I don't know, you really lost. Oh, you really got your priorities fucked up. Oh, my priorities are straight. They're queer, but they're straight. And I can connect the necklace to now, tangibly, materially. And I can connect the old tweets to now, tangibly and materially. I can connect the album cover to now. It is now, but the greater, right? The greater now, materially. I hate that shit. It is fucking basic bitch ass gaslighting. Ugh, cannot stand that shit. It should be banned phrases. "1988 Jeffy says Michael Vick is careful to check how he manages his frustration, and there's real disparity, um, and facing consequences that would make any nigga frustrated. Absolutely. Anybody. And that's real and justified. And that's why, again, even the Michael Vick situation is a nuanced conversation. It is a nuanced conversation. And, for me from the beginning, one of the things that was most interesting to me more than anything that never got discussed because we didn't use this terminology at the time, but what it means to have a deficit or a poverty mindset. We never really got into that conversation at the time because people were too busy either being outraged at the poor dogs or being outraged that he was treated unfairly because he was black. Um, but it wasn't until much later, when he did the two-part, I believe it was the two-part 30 for 30, where we really started to get into the conversation of why did you even feel like you needed to be involved in that, right? You had moved away from and you had gotten yourself up to, you moved on up to the east side. Why did you keep going back and doing this? That comes from a deficit mentality. And that's when for that particular situation, not overall, but that's when we started having that more nuanced conversation of what it means to be prosperous and still have a poverty mindset and how that can really fuck you up. That was always to me more interesting than anything. You look it up on your own. We're gonna talk about it in a couple weeks on the channel when I have a guest over. Taylor Swift got a racist Nazi necklace as a part of her merch, and white people are fucking losing their shit, and it's great. It's really fantastic. It's a necessary conversation, largely happening on, all the social media platforms. And one of the and another thing, another very significant thing that Taylor Swift has not publicly addressed or denounced in any way. So that's the short that's the short and sweet on it, but we ain't gonna talk about that white girl today. Reclaiming my time. Yeah. It truly, truly, truly. Well, thank you so much. Tail South Music. Appreciate you. But yeah, they wanted to boycott that man all week for being I mean, it's just stupid shit. Just stupid shit. And it's just like, okay, that's performative. It's performative moral outrage where you have picked what you think is an easy target that you can now position yourself above as morally superior to because, you're saying we're going to boycott this, that, or the other because he's the announcer. That's horse shit. But one of the other things that I talk about more and more on this channel is that we do live in a vindictive society. And so this is par for the course. Tyler, um, or what's his name? Black Moment. Totally forgot it. So sad. It's a sick day. I'm doing my best. Michael Vick.